Let's start with something most people get completely wrong about avoidant attachment. When someone pulls away from you, your instinct is to move closer. When they go silent, you get louder. When they create distance, you try to close the gap. That reaction feels loving. It feels mature. It feels like you're fighting for the relationship. But to someone operating from an avoidant attachment pattern, a dynamic deeply explored by researchers like John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth, your pursuit doesn't register as love. It registers as pressure. Avoidants are not driven by connection the way anxious attachers are. They are driven by autonomy. Their nervous system equates closeness with potential loss of freedom. So the more you lean in emotionally, the more their subconscious interprets you as a threat to independence. And here's the paradox. The moment you withdraw emotionally, not in anger, not in manipulation, but in grounded self-control, something shifts. You become unpredictable. You become uncertain. And uncertainty is psychologically powerful. Human beings value what feels scarce. That's not manipulation. That's behavioral economics. It's the same principle that makes rare assets more desirable. When you were constantly available, texting first, reassuring them, fixing conflict immediately, you were predictable. And predictability to an avoidant feels safety, but it also feels low risk. Low risk does not activate urgency. When you step back emotionally, you interrupt their expectation. You stop over-explaining. You stop oversharing. You stop chasing closure. You allow silence to exist without scrambling to fill it. And suddenly, you are not emotionally guaranteed anymore. Now, let's be clear. Emotional withdrawal here does not mean coldness, cruelty, or silent treatment. That's reactive. That's still emotional dependence in disguise. True withdrawal is calm, it's composed, it's rooted in self-respect. It sounds like this internally: I value you, but I value myself more. When you adopt that posture, your energy changes, your voice steadies. Your responses shorten. You're no longer trying to convince them of your worth. You're simply living it. Avoidants are highly sensitive to shifts in emotional climate. They may not verbalize it, but they feel it. When your attention is no longer orbiting around them, when your validation is no longer automatic, their nervous system registers loss. And loss is what activates attachment. This is where most people sabotage themselves. The moment the avoidant starts reaching back out, a text, a reaction, a subtle check-in, you flood them with availability again. You reward minimal effort with maximum access, and the cycle resets. Instead, you maintain composure. You respond, but you don't over-invest. You engage, but you don't pursue. You let them move toward you. This is psychological repositioning. You are no longer the pursuer. You are the chooser. Philosophically, this is about reclaiming sovereignty. Love that costs you your dignity is not love, it's fear. When you withdraw from chasing, you are not playing a game. You are breaking a pattern. You are teaching your nervous system that connection does not require self-abandonment. And here's the deeper truth. When you stop chasing them, you start finding yourself. Your focus returns to your growth, your mission, your body, your friendships, your purpose. Your life regains depth beyond one person's attention. That fullness is magnetic. Avoidants don't run back because you begged better. They run back because you became whole without them, because the emotional pressure dissolved, because your absence created reflection, because your silence forced them to confront what they might lose. But the ultimate power move isn't making them come back. It's becoming so grounded that whether they return or not no longer determines your worth. Withdraw the chase. Reclaim your center, and watch how quickly the dynamic shifts when you stop trying to hold on and start standing tall. Now let's go deeper, because this is where the real shift happens. Most people, when they feel an avoidant partner pulling away, go into performance mode. They try to prove they're worthy. They become more attentive, more accommodating, more understanding. They think, if I just show them how valuable I am, they'll finally see it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The more you try to convince someone of your value, the less valuable you appear. Avoidants often feel most comfortable when they sense they have the upper hand emotionally, not because they're evil or calculating, but because control equals safety in their nervous system. If they feel desired more than they desire, they feel secure. If they feel chased more than they chase, they feel powerful. And power, to an avoidant, reduces vulnerability. So when you constantly reassure them, constantly initiate, constantly adjust yourself to keep the peace, you unconsciously reinforce their position of emotional dominance. You're feeding their ego while starving your own growth. And that imbalance kills attraction. Psychologically, attraction thrives in polarity, in tension, in space, in mutual investment. When one person is overinvested and the other underinvested, the dynamic becomes unstable, not dramatic, just quietly imbalanced. So what's the shift? You stop trying to be impressive to them, and you start becoming impressive for yourself. This is not about revenge. It's not about posting curated photos to provoke jealousy. That's still reactive. That's still centered around them. This is about genuine expansion. You go to the gym not to make them regret losing you, but because your body deserves strength. You pursue new skills because your mind deserves stimulation. You reconnect with friends because your life deserves community. You focus on your career, your mission, your craft, because purpose stabilizes identity. When you start leveling up, something profound happens internally. Your self-concept changes. And self-concept is destiny. When you see yourself as growing, evolving, progressing, your need for external validation decreases. You're no longer waiting for their text to feel significant. You're no longer measuring your value by their attention. You are generating internal evidence of worth through action. Avoidants are incredibly sensitive to shifts in power dynamics. The moment they sense you are no longer emotionally orbiting them, they feel it. The moment your energy shifts from choose me to I'm choosing myself, the polarity rebalances, and here's the deeper layer growth triggers fear of loss. When they see you thriving, calmer, fitter, more focused, socially active, purposeful, it disrupts their assumption that you'll always be available. It challenges the subconscious narrative that they can take their time, pull away, and return whenever it suits them. Now there's risk, and risk activates attention. Human beings are wired to protect perceived value. When your value increases, not theatrically, but authentically, their attachment system wakes up. They begin to question their detachment. They begin to notice your absence differently. They begin to compare the version of you they had with the version you are becoming. And growth is magnetic because it signals abundance. Abundance says, I have options. Abundance says, my life is full. Abundance says, you are welcome here, but you are not my oxygen. That energy is radically different from neediness. Here's the philosophical core of this. When you build yourself, you become sovereign. You are no longer negotiating your worth. You are embodying it. And embodiment cannot be argued with. This doesn't guarantee they'll come back. Nothing does. But it guarantees something more important, that you rise regardless of the outcome. And ironically, that's often what makes them turn around. Because people don't chase what begs. They chase what grows beyond them. So stop feeding their ego with constant reassurance. Start feeding your evolution with disciplined action. Build a life so compelling that their return becomes optional, not necessary. Level up so powerfully that whether they come back or not, you've already won. Now, let's talk about something that sounds simple, but is psychologically profound, mirroring their energy without bitterness. Most people hear that and immediately think, so I'm supposed to play games. No. Games are manipulative. They're reactive. They come from ego and insecurity. What we're talking about here is calibration, emotional calibration. When you're dealing with an avoidant dynamic, imbalance is the core problem. You text long paragraphs, they reply with one line. You respond instantly, they take hours. You initiate plans, they say, let's see. Over time, that uneven rhythm creates anxiety on your side and comfort on theirs. Why? Because you are over functioning and they are under functioning. From a psychological perspective, relationships operate like systems. If one person consistently overinvests, the other unconsciously compensates by investing less. It's not always malicious. It's systemic. As family systems theory suggests, an idea popularized in modern psychology by thinkers like Murray Bowen, imbalance in one part of a system forces adjustment in another. So when you match their energy calmly, you're not punishing them. You're stabilizing the system. If they take 6 hours to respond, you don't anxiously reply in 6 seconds. You respond when it's natural for you. If they pull back slightly, you don't chase harder, you lean back slightly too. Not dramatically, not theatrically, subtly. This is not about revenge. It's about rhythm. Avoidants are highly attuned to emotional intensity. When you flood them with urgency, they retreat. When you mirror their pace, you remove the pressure. Suddenly, the interaction feels safer to them. There's space to breathe. But here's the key distinction. You must mirror without resentment. If you're thinking, fine, I'll show them, your tone will betray you. Your pauses will feel loaded. Your silence will feel hostile, and hostility pushes an avoidant further away. True mirroring is emotionally neutral. It's grounded. It says internally, I will not invest more than what is being reciprocated. That single decision changes everything. You stop overextending. You stop over-explaining. You stop over-giving access. You allow reciprocity to determine depth. And reciprocity is the foundation of respect. Avoidants often respect emotional independence more than emotional intensity. When they sense that you are not anxiously waiting, not hanging on every word, not structuring your day around their availability, they feel something unfamiliar, equality, and equality generates attraction. Let's go deeper philosophically. When you overgive, you are unconsciously negotiating for love. When you mirror calmly, you are embodying self-respect. Self-respect is quiet power. It doesn't demand attention. It commands it. Think about it this way. When two people dance, if one person constantly lunges forward, the dance collapses. But when both maintain balance and respond to each other's movements, the dance becomes fluid. Mirroring restores balance. It also protects your nervous system. Instead of riding the emotional roller coaster of, why haven't they replied? You create internal stability. You respond proportionally. You invest proportionally. Your emotional output matches theirs. And here's what happens next. They begin to feel the space. When you stop over-initiating, they have room to initiate. When you stop filling every silence, they feel the silence. When you stop carrying the emotional labor alone, they notice its absence. And awareness creates choice. You are no longer chasing connection. You are inviting it at an equal level. This approach forces clarity. Either they step forward to meet you, or they reveal their lack of investment. Both outcomes are valuable. Both outcomes free you from illusion, because the goal is not to manipulate them into running back. The goal is to create a dynamic where mutual effort becomes the standard. Mirror their energy calmly. Match their pace without malice. Let reciprocity determine depth. And remember this, power in relationships doesn't come from controlling someone else's behavior. It comes from mastering your own. Now let's move into something that separates emotional strength from emotional reactivity, removing emotional safety without creating drama. That phrase might sound harsh at first. Remove emotional safety. But understand what we mean here. We're not talking about cruelty. We're not talking about emotional punishment. We're talking about removing unconditional access. Avoidants often stay distant because, at a subconscious level, they assume you will always be there. No matter how long they take to reply, no matter how inconsistently they show up, no matter how many times they withdraw, there's an underlying belief. They're not going anywhere. And certainty without accountability breeds complacency. When someone feels no risk of losing you, they feel no urgency to value you. This is not about playing hard to get. It's about restoring consequence to behavior. In many anxious, avoidant dynamics, one person becomes the emotional safety net. You absorb the inconsistency. You rationalize the distance. You accept half effort while giving full commitment. Over time, you teach them that minimal investment is sufficient, and people rise or fall to the level of standards you consistently enforce. Here's the key: you remove emotional safety by introducing boundaries, not explosions. Drama is reactive. It's loud. It's emotional. It says, "You hurt me, so I'll hurt you back." That only reinforces an avoidance fear that closeness equals chaos. Boundaries are calm. A boundary sounds like this: I value consistency. I'm not available for last-minute plans. If you need space, I respect that, but I won't wait indefinitely. Notice the tone. No accusation, no blame, no emotional flooding, just clarity. Psychologically, this shifts the dynamic in two ways. First, it introduces uncertainty. Not toxic uncertainty, but relational uncertainty. They can no longer assume unlimited access. They can no longer predict that you'll absorb everything without consequence. Second, it restores your self-respect. Philosophically, boundaries are an act of self-definition. They answer the question, what do I allow in my life? Without boundaries, you dissolve into the needs and fears of the other person. With boundaries, you remain whole. Avoidants are paradoxical. They crave connection, but they fear engulfment. They want closeness, but only when it feels safe. When you create drama, you confirm their fear, but when you calmly enforce standards, you create a different experience. Stability with strength, and strength commands respect. When you stop over-accommodating, something interesting happens. They begin to feel what you once felt. Instability, not because you're being inconsistent, but because you are no longer predictable in your tolerance. They have to decide. Step up or step away. That moment of decision is powerful. It forces self-reflection. It forces them to confront the possibility that they could actually lose you, and loss is clarifying. But here's the deeper layer. Removing emotional safety isn't primarily about influencing them. It's about protecting you. It's about refusing to sacrifice your peace for the illusion of connection. When you enforce standards calmly, your nervous system stabilizes. You're no longer in survival mode, scanning for their next withdrawal. You're grounded. You're steady. You know what you accept and what you don't. And that grounded energy is profoundly attractive because real security isn't found in being endlessly available. It's found in being selectively available. You can care deeply and still require consistency. You can love fully and still expect respect. Those two things are not opposites. They are partners. So remove unconditional access. Replace it with earned presence. Remove emotional overfunctioning. Replace it with balanced reciprocity. Let your standards speak quietly, consistently, and without drama. Because the moment someone realizes they can lose you, without chaos, without pleading, without spectacle, is the moment they begin to understand your true value. And value is never recognized where there is no risk. Now let's talk about identity, because this is where the deepest transformation happens. When you're entangled in an avoidant dynamic, it's very easy for your world to shrink. Your emotional focus narrows. Your thoughts revolve around their texts, their tone shifts, their availability. You start measuring your day by their level of engagement, and without realizing it, your identity begins to organize itself around the relationship. That's not love. That's fusion. Avoidants are highly sensitive to fusion. When they sense that someone's emotional world revolves around them, it triggers pressure. Not because they don't care, but because their nervous system equates enmeshment with loss of autonomy. They begin to feel responsible for your emotional stability. And that responsibility feels heavy. So they pull back. And when they pull back, you lean in harder. The cycle tightens. Breaking that cycle requires something radical, rebuilding your identity outside the relationship. This is not about pretending you don't care. It's about remembering who you were before you started orbiting someone else's attention. It's about reclaiming the parts of your self that existed independently, your ambitions, your friendships, your curiosity, your mission. Psychologically, identity is the anchor of attraction. We are drawn to people who feel internally solid, not perfect, not detached, solid. When your life becomes multidimensional again, something shifts energetically. You're not waiting for their call to feel alive. You're not structuring your schedule around their unpredictability. Your calendar fills with purpose. Your conversations expand beyond relationship analysis. Your emotional state becomes less reactive. You become centered, and centered people are powerful. From a philosophical standpoint, love should be an addition to your life, not the foundation of your identity. When someone becomes your primary source of validation, stimulation, and meaning, you unconsciously place them in a position of power over your emotional state. That imbalance creates anxiety in you and pressure in them. But when you build a life that feels full, something remarkable happens. You shift from "I need you" to "I enjoy you." And that subtle shift changes everything. Neediness contracts energy, enjoyment expands it. Avoidants are often drawn to partners who feel autonomous, not cold, not distant, autonomous. There's a difference. Autonomy says, I am whole on my own, and I choose to connect with you. That feels safe to someone who fears being engulfed. Think about the psychology of attraction. We are most magnetic when we are in motion, pursuing goals, developing skills, expanding socially. Growth signals vitality, vitality signals options, and options create perceived value. When your identity is diversified, you are no longer destabilized by one person's inconsistency. If they pull back, you still have your mission. If they go quiet, you still have your gym routine, your creative projects, your friends, your long-term vision. Your emotional survival no longer depends on their responsiveness, and that stability changes the dynamic. They begin to notice the difference. You're calmer. You're less reactive. You're not chasing clarity every time they create distance. You're engaged, but not entangled. That's attractive because it feels balanced. But here's the deeper truth. Rebuilding your identity isn't primarily about getting them back. It's about reclaiming yourself. It's about refusing to let romantic uncertainty shrink your potential. When your world expands, you stop trying to fit inside theirs. And paradoxically, that's often when they start trying to re-enter yours. Because people don't fear losing someone who has nowhere else to go. They fear losing someone who is moving forward with or without them. So rebuild your life. Strengthen your body. Sharpen your mind. Expand your circle. Deepen your purpose. Let love be part of your world, not the center of it. Because the moment you become whole on your own is the moment you stop chasing connection and start attracting it. Now we arrive at the most powerful shift of all, and it's the one nobody wants to hear at first. Detachment, not indifference, not coldness, not pretending you don't care. True detachment is emotional sovereignty. Up to this point, we've talked about withdrawing the chase, leveling up your life, mirroring energy, enforcing boundaries, rebuilding identity. But none of those strategies truly work unless they are grounded in one internal decision. I will be okay whether they return or not. That sentence is terrifying for many people because as long as you are secretly hoping they come back, your energy is still tied to the outcome. And avoidance can feel outcome dependence immediately. Why? Because attachment isn't just behavioral, it's neurological. Research on adult attachment, explored by psychologists like Amir Levine and Rachel Heller in their work on attachment dynamics, shows that anxious and avoidant systems trigger each other in predictable ways. The anxious partner seeks reassurance. The avoidant partner seeks space. The more one pursues, the more the other distances. Detachment interrupts that neurological dance. When you genuinely accept uncertainty, when you stop strategizing how to make them feel something, your nervous system calms down. You're no longer hyper, monitoring their behavior. You're no longer decoding every message for hidden meaning. You're present in your own life again, and that internal calm changes your external presence. Your voice slows down. Your responses become measured. Your emotional reactions soften. There's no urgency in you. No subtle demand for reassurance. You're not scanning for signs of validation. You are grounded, and grounded energy is incredibly powerful. Here's the paradox: avoidants move closer when they feel less pressure. Pressure doesn't have to be spoken. It can exist in tone, in pacing, in expectation. If they sense that their return is required for your stability, they will feel trapped. But when they sense that you are stable, regardless, that you desire them but do not depend on them, something opens. Because now closeness feels like choice, not obligation. Detachment also restores clarity. When you are no longer attached to a specific outcome, you begin to evaluate the relationship more objectively. You ask different questions, not how do I get them back, but does this dynamic actually align with my standards? That shift is transformative. Instead of trying to win someone over, you begin assessing compatibility. Instead of fearing abandonment, you begin valuing reciprocity. Instead of obsessing over timing, you begin trusting alignment. Philosophically, detachment is freedom from illusion. It's the recognition that you cannot control another person's readiness, capacity, or emotional depth. You can only control your participation, and participation is a choice. When you detach, you stop trying to engineer their awakening. You stop trying to trigger their jealousy. You stop trying to manipulate their fear of loss. You simply live. Ironically, that's often when they feel the shift most strongly, because now there's space. Space for them to miss you. Space for them to reflect. Space for them to feel the absence without emotional noise. But here's the most important part: detachment protects you even if they never come back. You are no longer suspended in waiting. You are no longer negotiating your peace for possibility. You are anchored in your own life. And that is the ultimate psychological advantage. Because when you truly accept that they may never return, you release fear. And when fear leaves, confidence enters. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. And the moment you stop clinging is the moment you reclaim your power, with or without them. So when you step back and look at everything we've talked about, you begin to see the pattern clearly. Avoidants don't come running back because you argued better. They don't come back because you loved harder. They don't come back because you explained your feelings perfectly. They come back when the dynamic changes. They come back when the pressure disappears, when the chasing stops, when the overgiving ends, when the emotional imbalance corrects itself. But here's the truth most people miss. None of this is actually about getting them back. It's about getting yourself back. When you withdraw the chase, you reclaim your dignity. When you focus on growth, you rebuild your leverage. When you mirror calmly, you restore balance. When you set boundaries without drama, you command respect. When you rebuild your identity, you become whole again. And when you master detachment, you become free. Freedom is the real attraction, because the energy of someone who is grounded, evolving, self-respecting, and unattached to outcome is rare. It's steady, it's confident, it's powerful without being loud. And that energy shifts everything. If they come back, they don't come back to the old version of you, the anxious, overextending, approval-seeking version. They come back to someone who has standards, someone who has options, someone who is choosing, not begging. And if they don't come back, you've still won, because you no longer measure your worth by someone else's capacity to love you. You no longer shrink yourself to maintain connection. You no longer trade self-respect for temporary reassurance. You become the kind of person who attracts secure, balanced love, not because you're trying to, but because it matches your internal state. That's the final paradox. The moment you stop trying to make an avoidant run back is the moment you stop running after anyone at all. And when you stop running, you stand. And when you stand, you rise. And when you rise, the right people move toward you naturally. So don't focus on making them come back fast. Focus on becoming so centered, so strong, so internally aligned, that whether they return or not no longer defines your future. That is power. That is freedom. And that is the real transformation.